Daemon isn't that weak. Yeah, I know maybe this doesn't directly represent whether the fandom sees Daemon as weak or not, but what I mean is, by assuming that Daemon got caught in Sarada's Genjutsu secretly or without him realizing it, does that indirectly mean we're considering Daemon weak? And today, there are a few clues and reasons that you might agree with, showing that Daemon, or more precisely Sarada, cannot put Daemon under Genjutsu. But before that, I'm Nim, without the E. If you're watching this video on a mobile phone, please give me your hype. Thanks, guys. So yeah, first and most importantly is the last panel of the scene in chapter 26, which was very unexpected, especially with the circulation of a rather interesting theory about Sarada, who is rumored to have successfully used Genjutsu on Daemon before he, with an instinct that preceded Sarada's own intention to use her MS, reflexively jumped towards Sarada and choked her. Honestly, after looking at it from various perspectives, Daemon and Sarada actually trigger two reactions. I mean, besides the theory about how Sarada activated Genjutsu on Daemon, there are also rumors or theories about Daemon's true power, which definitely surpasses Sarada's. But first, what you need to remember is the reason why we say Daemon isn't that weak. We can realize this when Daemon was able to defeat Code, who had already removed his limiter, with ease. And that's not all, of course. When you see how Daemon reflexively catches Kawaki's black rod with its bare hands, especially with its mouth, it's a reflex speed that cannot be underestimated, especially when Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan ability is slower than Daemon's own movements. But for some reason, even though we know that the Uchiha pride themselves on the power of their eyes, which can see or predict the movements of every enemy, it turns out that this cannot be used as an absolute reason, because some scenes can be used as a basis or reason. You should still remember the battle between Sasuke and Jigen. What I mean is, the only moves that couldn't be properly seen were Jigen's or Ishiki's black rod attacks, which appeared suddenly and were difficult to predict. And that's exactly what Sasuke once said when he witnessed how Ishiki fought against Naruto in Baryon mode. Sasuke was truly amazed at how Naruto was able to catch them, while Sasuke himself admitted that even his Sharingan wasn't capable of doing so. Then you're probably going to ask what the meaning and connection to Daemon is, right? Even though this might be hard to accept, wasn't Kawaki at that time on par with Ishiki in terms of defense and power level? In other words, the fact that Daemon was able to catch Kawaki's black rods, especially considering Sasuke's statement that even the Sharingan couldn't predict those rods, yet Daemon could handle them with ease. Doesn't that mean Daemon's speed is above the Sharingan? Yeah, I know maybe this can't be taken as an absolute reason, especially since Sarada has already reached the level of her predecessor, but still, doesn't that make Daemon's speed worth considering? I know with your intelligence in observing and comparing every detail, you can refute this. But guys, there is one absolute reason that may be difficult to ignore if, in fact, Daemon can be an exception to the absolute power of the Uchiha clan itself, especially the power of the Sharingan Eye. And you know what? Daemon's Shinjutsu power, or his eyes, are actually the point that makes Daemon faster than Sarada's Sharingan Eyes. In other words, Daemon's basic power is just a reflection and nothing else, right? However, from this basic reflection, many branches of power emerge that we certainly cannot conclude so simply. But at least there are some mistakes or perhaps debates in the understanding of Daemon's power itself. I mean, it's still not very clear how Daemon can reflect someone's evil intentions. And perhaps it's as simple as active and passive. Active means that the reflection ability can only be used when Daemon touches someone's body with their palm. Then passive can occur if someone has evil intentions. So in other words, with this passive power, Daemon doesn't need to touch someone with its palm to reflect their intentions or attacks. And yeah, maybe this will be an inconsistency or debate, especially with Bug's statement about how to deal with Daemon when Code fights it. But for sure, what Bug told Code wasn't wrong. Especially when the attack is reflected, it is the effect of Daemon's active power that successfully touched the opponent's body. In fact, Code's reflected attack is not Daemon's active power, but passive power. So if at this point you're confused, the simple explanation is that Daemon's active power isn't something that automatically triggers the moment he touches with his palm. It is a power that must be accompanied by Daemon's own intention. If Daemon intends to use that active power, then automatically that power will be reflected. However, if Daemon does not intend to use it, then that power will not work. And perhaps as an example, this is why when Boruto attacked Daemon, Boruto's attack was not immediately reflected. Apparently, this was because Daemon did not intend to activate its active power. Honestly, when I try to find or describe this sentence in simpler words, I doubt that you'd actually be confused. But I'm sure you understand, yeah. That's just how it is. However, to summarize this common thread, daemons have separate power systems. This means that if one is active, the other becomes inactive. If you look at the speed that daemons possess, I think it comes from deactivating their reflective power. In other words, if a daemon chooses to deactivate its reflective power, it will instead gain maximum speed. This is a substitute if its active reflective power cannot be used effectively in battle. So at this point, it actually has 3 powers. First, passive power, active power and speed power generated from deactivating its reflective power. And for the case of Sarada and Sumire, we clearly don't see how Daemon's passive ability works on Sarada and Sumire, right? This means that Sarada and Sumire already know the secret of Daemon's power. In particular, when dealing with Sharingan users, Daemon understands that speed is the key, because what makes this a piece of evidence is Daemon's own words. Daemon considered Sarada's proud Mangekyo Sharingan useless if she died before even using it. So this line isn't just a random piece of narration, it actually carries a reason behind it. One thing is certain, the reason is because Daemon understands that its speed cannot be matched by the speed of Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan. So, no matter how powerful her Mangekyo is, if Daemon can be faster than Sarada's eyes, then Daemon will always be above Sarada. Yeah, that's how it is. However, at this point, I'm not actually underestimating Sarada, because at least this last piece of evidence can be considered if Sarada can't use Genjutsu on Daemon. First, Genjutsu is basically the manipulation of chakra into the opponent's nervous system, making them see or feel things that aren't real. Meanwhile, Daemon's ability is intention reflection. This means that if there is an illusion intended to harm him, whatever it may be, the effect will bounce back to the user. So even if Sarada tries to use Genjutsu with the intention of trapping or attacking Daemon, the effect will likely bounce back directly to Sarada herself. But one thing is certain, Genjutsu has never been shown to be effective on Otsutsuki or characters with Otsutsuki powers, especially cyborgs. Daemon is not only a cyborg, but he also inherits the power of the Otsutsuki god. So in my opinion, it's impossible for Sarada, who has only just awakened her Mangekyo Sharingan, to suddenly manifest another ability like a Genjutsu that could trap Daemon in an illusion. However, in the end, this is just an analytical theory without underestimating Sarada herself. I'm sure Sarada will actually have abilities similar to Genjutsu or something like that, but logically, it won't be that fast. We have to remember that Sarada has just awakened extremely overpowered abilities. I mean, would it happen that quickly with such a slow story pace? And again, I'm sure that Sarada will eventually gain a power that may be even stronger than Genjutsu itself. But if you have a more reasonable explanation as to why Daemon should be affected by Genjutsu or something like that, as rumored, please let me know. So yeah, I guess that's all for now. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe. I'm Nim without the E, and see you in the next video. Bye bye, Dada Bio.